Good morning. Bill Hettinger here. I'd like to provide a little video on a little topic I call Why Have Accountants Made It So Difficult to Understand Finance? Finance is the key language of business. Ideally, a business professional should understand all the financial implications of their decisions. This is all their spending decisions, borrowing decisions, investment decisions. They conceptually need to know everything from the time value of money, how to calculate interest payments on a loan, and how their operational decisions affect the bottom line of the business. Unfortunately, as survey after survey has shown, there's really a significant lack of understanding of these processes and this terminology. In many of our surveys, we've found that the respondents can't tell you which financial statement tells you what a business owns and owes, and a significant number cannot tell you how much money the business made last year. It's more typical that they'll ask their accountant how much money the business made than actually understand it themselves. So if finance is such a critical skill, why is it so difficult to understand? From my perspective, the problem really is that is not that people cannot understand finance. The key concepts are really relatively easy to understand. The problem is that finance is often presented in ways that make it very difficult to understand. It seems in the world of finance, there are at least two words for every event. When our accountants, authors, advisors, educators speak about finance, they tend to use the multiple terms interchangeably. They know the language. The terminology is not a problem for them. If you don't understand a language, it's like listening to a speech where some of the words are in English, others are in Spanish and French. If you don't speak all the languages, you really don't understand what's happening. In our books, we call this accountant speak. The accountant is speaking a language they understand, but it's very, very intimidating to an initiative. So as anyone who owns or operates a business can tell you, the success of that business is measured by looking at how much money the business made or lost. A business is considered successful if you're making money. If you're losing money, you're not so successful. So a great place to start with trying to understand financial terminology is with the profit and loss statement. As you might guess, the profit and loss statement shows the profits and losses of the business. Seems pretty straightforward, right? How confusing can that be? Profit and loss statement shows profits and losses. Well, let's start by taking the profit and loss statement and let's abbreviate it. It becomes the P&L statement. So the profit and loss statement is now the P&L statement. Okay, now it's the profit and loss, now it's the P&L. So the profit and loss statement shows what the business made from their selling activities and from their operating activities. Okay, the difference between the business's revenue and cost of goods sold is gross profit. The gross profit, you deduct from gross profit your operating expenses, your selling expenses, your general administrative expenses, office expenses, the rent, that type of thing. You get operating profit, and you deduct your interest and taxes from operating profit. You get net profit. The net profit's the bottom line of the business. When someone asks what the bottom line of their business is, they're asking about what the net profit was. How much money did I make during this period? Now, you're probably saying to yourself at this point, that seems pretty straightforward. We have revenue, we deduct expenses, we get profits. Relatively easy, simple concept, should be easy to understand. Now, let me introduce some accountant speak to the equation. Let me introduce the confusion. There's also an accounting statement known as the income statement. What's the income statement? It's the profit and loss statement by another name. So sometimes accountants use this statement that tells you how much money the business made. Sometimes it's the profit and loss statement. Sometimes it's the P&L. Sometimes it's the income statement. I've got three terms for the same thing: English, Spanish, and French in effect. Of course, on the income statement, instead of using the term gross profit, you'll probably see the term gross income. Instead of the term operating profit, you might see the term operating income. Instead of showing you the bottom line as net profit, the bottom line might be net income. You want a little bit more confusion? Sometimes the profit and loss statement, or the income statement as it's also known, is also known as a statement of earnings or earnings statement. And instead of talking about profits and income, the word earnings is substituted. So now we get operating earnings. We have gross earnings. We have net earnings. You see this a lot on TV when the announcers on the financial news channels talk about earnings releases from companies. They're talking about income releases. They're talking about profit releases, but somehow those become earning releases on the TV. So to add to that confusion, the Wall Street folks, of course, don't like the terms operating profit and operating income, and they devised their own term, EBIT, which means earnings before interest and taxes. Earnings before interest and taxes is essentially the same thing as operating income or operating profit. It's just another name for the same thing. EBIT is put in the middle of your profit and loss statement, in the middle of your income statement. So now I've got four names for the same thing. I have operating profit, operating income, operating earnings, and EBIT. They're all the same thing. They each show you how much money the business made. So to the accountants, to the Wall Street folks, profits, earnings, income all mean the same thing. To everybody else, man, it seems like three different things. So the terms even get used interchangeably on the financial statements, and we've seen this. We see this quite a book. We see this quite a bit. When we wrote Finance Without Fear, one of the things we did was have many discussions about what we were going to call the statement that showed the profitability of the business. Were we going to call it a profit and loss statement? We're going to call it an income statement? Or we're going to call it something else? So how do you solve this problem? I laid out 10 different finance books on my desk. And I looked at all 10 of those different finance books, and it was pretty much split 5 and 5 between profit and loss statement and income statement. So then I went over to my computer and I loaded my QuickBooks accounting software. I checked the drop-down menu for financial reports. QuickBooks called it a profit and loss statement. I said, okay, we'll call it a profit and loss statement. Part of that was we were also trying to focus. Profits tends to be a little bit of a simpler term than talking about earnings and income. It just seemed to be a more straightforward term. So we went with profit and loss statement. Of course, if you look a little bit deeper at the profit and loss statement that QuickBooks puts out, you'll see that it says profit and loss statement on the top, but a little bit later it shows the net income on the bottom line rather than net profit. So you even see the terminology get mixed up within the reports, and you'll see this on a lot of corporate earnings reports as well, corporate profit and loss statements. They use the terms interchangeably. So everything clear now? Profits, income, earnings, and the bottom line are all the same thing. So as you can see, it's not really the concepts that are difficult, it's the terminology that makes the concepts difficult. In part 2 of this video, we'll delve a little bit deeper into some of the terminology that you'll find in some of the sub-items on a profit and loss statement.